Hello, everybody. Welcome to Black Sunday. Today, I have awards-winning horror author and also avid banjo player, Mort Castle, here with me. Hello, Mort.
Hello there.
So how are you today?
I am absolutely great. I started off this morning with a cardio rehabilitation program, and I'm getting so muscular and healthy, I'm going to hit the Olympics, I'm sure, any day now.
Sounds like a great morning. I love it.
It was a great morning.
I hate exercising.
Well, I used to, but all of a sudden, I've got an amiable group to do it with. I've got really well-trained people. I mean, it's all in the whole setup. If you're doing it all by yourself and all alone, phooey. But this is very nice.
It's always about
Plus,
the community.
it's not snowing. Yes, it is. It's a good community too.
And speaking of community, here in the Czech Republic, there is a pretty big community of horror fans. And I notice you interact with them a lot. So what do you say about our community?
First of all, I absolutely love it because it is so serious about enjoying the field. Okay, I know there's a lot of knowledge there. I was familiar with some of the Czech publications, some of the Czech writers, certainly due to my pal Hansa Eraserhead and his Howard years ago. And then, of course, when I've been in touch with people, to discover the depth of their knowledge, to know that if I say Lovecraft, they're going to say, oh yes, and I particularly liked his At the Mountains of Madness, and then they're going to go farther with, not only did I like it, but here's why I liked it. Czech readers of horror really read. They don't want something simplistic and here comes the monster, there are the dead people, the end, good guys win. So Czech readership is beautiful. It's a pleasure to exchange correspondence with these people, to talk with them.
That's good to hear. That's lovely. And were you surprised about the community here? Like, we are a very small country and very far away from the USA, so.
Yes and no. I know for many years, most countries in Eastern Europe didn't have access to horror. And so now that that access is there, I can understand the enthusiasm. Here was the long denied candy, and all of a sudden we've got it, and gimme, 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 gimme. And I mean, I could name some Czech horror fans that are so much more knowledgeable than I am about the field.
I'm sure they would love to hear that.
So it's just great. I'm not going to call out Sense Lord by name, but there you go.
Okay, he will be happy to hear his almost name.
He really knows what he's about, yes. And of course, Martin Stefko, I think we both have reason to respect and like that guy.
Of course. He's a very good friend.
You pick good friends. That's a good choice.
Okay. So speaking of Martin, he is the publisher here in Czech Republic. He has Golden Dog Books Publishing, and he published 2 of your books, The Strangers and New Moon on the Water. And
yes, you mean this one? Huh?
Yes.
And you mean this one? Yes, I just thought I'd wave those around.
I planned to, and then I forgot them in my bookcase, so I'm happy you have them. So I'm going to ask you about The Strangers.
Sure.
In The Strangers, you used a concept of aura. It was mostly at the end shown. And did you know before you started writing that you will have some supernatural element in this? Or did The Strangers start as realistic story and it changed?
Now that's really a great question, because by the time I got done doing my research for this book, and I research everything to death. I mean, my idea of research is throw yourself into all the information you can find. And if you're meant to be able to swim out of it and come to the top, you will, okay? So by the time I ended up doing the research, I was convinced auras were not supernatural, but could easily be viewed as totally realistic. I'd talked to people, and people I valued, one of them a practicing psychiatrist, who said, oh, there's no question, I can see auras. And I can tell you right now that you're very upset about what you're trying to do because you're not sure which, and he was right. He was right on target. He says, you're ordinary gold when I see you. Not today, you're not gold. Today you're afraid gold and there's some black around the edge. And he was dead on target. And this is as serious a scholar as could be. So I approached aura as though it were just as realistic as a heart attack. And by approaching it that way, I think I made it more credible than it would have been if it were just a, oh, here's a supernatural gimmick, and here's another supernatural gimmick. My firm belief is most of the horror that I write, the basis for most of the horror that I write is the monsters that live here in us, not out there. So yeah, I considered auras totally realistic.
I didn't think about it like that when I read it, but yeah, you have a point. I've heard about some like therapists talking about aura sometimes. Yeah. And I also understand the research part. I have hard times with research. That's why I have to make up everything. Because I never swim research. To the top.
I mean, if we want to find out the secret of Kafka's ability to grab people, he takes one wild idea and everything else is super realistic. I mean, his bucket rider story is definitely a travel log, and you can see everything just as realistically as you would from the window of a train. And it's that realism for me that comes from the research. If I'm reading a story, it's a thriller, I want those thriller guns to be realistic. If I'm reading a story that's about Dan Simmons, one of my great favorites. Dan Simmons, The Terror, that book was so realistic in describing Arctic cold that I had to go put on a sweater. And that's it. Give us 100% realism, plus realism, super realism, and then you can get away with any of the supernatural stuff.
Yeah, thank you. And I've heard on a grapevine that The Strangers will be adapted as a movie or a TV series. Is that true?
We're working on it very hard. We were working on it even harder just before the Writers Guild strike, which knocked everything out of the box. And then, of course, the actors strike, extending it. But yes, we're in process. When I say we're, I'm working with Mark Valadez, who was a producer and a writer of Queen of the South, which was a top-rated USA Network show. And we have Ryan Onan aboard, who was a sustaining character in Queen of the South and also was a lead in Big Sky. And he's attached to play Michael Loudon. So it's in development. Everything's in development. It takes forever. But if it happens, I'm going to be very, very pleased. And if it happens, one of the elements we have in the pitch package is the video trailer that Martin put together for Golden Dog. We've redubbed it in English. I'm sorry about that, Czech fans, but we have redubbed it in English, but it's a great short trailer and it gives the essence of what the book is all about.
That's amazing. I love it. And are you planning a sequel to the novel or not?
Oh yes, that's also in the works. It's we're hoping it will be out before the end of 2024. Once again, I say we're because I'm working on this. This is my first writing collaboration with anybody, and I'm collaborating with Mark Valadez. Interesting story. I have known Mark for over 30 years. He was once my high school student. As a 14-year-old, he was getting comments on his scripts when he sent them off to Miami Vice people. They said, "We like what you're doing here. We're going to give you some tips." And now he's written for a lot of television. He's written 3 or 4 novels. It's just great. Suddenly, the student has become sometimes my teacher.
It's amazing to see students grow. I am a teacher, so I teach middle school for you, and it's amazing. They are so small, and then they are basically adults. And
yes, and then they come back, and it's hi. Wow.
And that's great. So how does it feel to collaborate with someone on writing? You said it's your first collaboration, so is it hard?
It's great. It takes a lot of the loneliness out of this business, and you're a writer. You know what that is. You know, on those days when it's you and the walls, and you're going crazy because here's that spot on the wall where I've been beating my head. Yes. And here it's, "Mark, what do you think of this?" "Yeah, that's good, but here's how we can change." "Thank you, I was stuck." And Mark can call on me with, "Are we remaining true?" You're not so questioning of your own self, and you're not walking in, "Here I am, and I'm going here," and endlessly. So yeah, it's great. That's one of the reasons I love working in comic books, because that artist you work with can give you some feedback. That kind of collaboration I've done.
Mm-hmm. And how do you write? Do you write a chapter and he writes a chapter, or do you switch points of view, or how does the process look?
Right now we're each doing, this is the outline, and his outlining skills are better than mine. So basically it's his outline, and I've done the prologue. He's doing chapter 1 and 2. I'm working on chapter 3 as well. And we'll do it that way. And of course, well, you know how easy it is to communicate technologically. We could Zoom, and by the time we got done cursing Zoom, we would have 4 chapters written.
Or like 45 minutes of video.
You bet. But it's just great. I mean, particularly when it's hot, when we're hot, really working at it. And "Mark, this sentence, does it stay or does it go?" "It has to go. You're slowing the pace. Thank you." That kind of instant feedback that you don't get from, I've never imagined a real writing group being worth anything, because too many areas of interest, too many areas of expertise, too many levels of expertise. But this is perfect. And Mark is a terrific talent. I mean, as a 14-year-old, he was doing TV scripts that made sense. When he was 20, he did a Stephen King adaptation for a comic. 20 years old, you know, kid. And now that he's no longer a kid, he's got experience and energy. So it's just great collaborating with him. I love it.
Okay. And you talked about comics. So what's the difference between writing a short story or a novel and comics?
I've loved comics since forever. I learned to read because of Batman and Little Lulu, okay? I was 4.5 years old. I figured out that if you look inside those balloons and figure out what that is, you get twice as much story. So I did. And what I like about comics so much now, I'm not naturally a visual writer. Comics force me to be visual. They force me to throw away some of the creative writing tricks. You don't bring your use of metaphor to comic books. You don't bring your, oh, look at that alliterative, poetic phrase to comic books. You need clear, simple, here is what we want in this picture. Because the artist will draw just what you give him. And it's one of the reasons that policemen and newspaper reporters make great comic book writers is this is what it looked like exactly. This is what I saw. This is what the reader will see. And that's great for me. And I find if I'm hung up on a story, I'll say, let's stop doing a story. Let's do a comic book script. And it forces me to get visual. It forces me to forget about things like, and deep within his soul, you can't put together a picture showing anybody's deep soul. You put together a picture showing a guy with his hand to his forehead like this. He was deeply hurt by the loss of his dog. How do you show that? Well, you show a guy walking out of the veterinarian office holding a collar, and you don't need a single word. Comic books are very much related to silent films. And as you might have guessed, I'm a big fan of silent films. We don't need, in the best comic book, the words are extras. Sometimes they can make more than 100% words and pictures, but initially it's the pictures that give you the story. And I love doing that. I love forcing myself to do that. It doesn't come naturally. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense to me.
Terrific.
Because I tried to write some comic scripts, but I had a good artist and we fit well. So I could just say, you know, it has this feeling, and she would do it. But yeah, I had trouble writing that. So thank you for the advice, basically.
You're quite welcome. And something people don't know, but if I'm putting together a 20-page comic book story, I'm probably going to write 60 to 80 pages of script and then supply another 20 to 40 pages of visual references. I will never say to a comic book artist, and now he grabs a gun, because a comic book artist will draw this super space bazooka when I'm thinking about a Colt 45 Peacemaker 1873 model. So here is the specific gun. Here is the specific car. Again, visual and specific. And yes, I love comic books.
There is a big comic community here in the Czech Republic too, but we don't make a lot of comics. Okay, let's look at readers, because I've read interview with you at Golden Dog, and there you said that readers outside of the USA like to explore when when writers change their style, unlike the US readers. So are there any more differences between readers in and out of the USA?
It's interesting because I find that my South American readers and Spanish readers will find religious motifs in my work when I wasn't necessarily aware that they were there, okay? And that's funny. I find that Polish readers in particular, I can go as deep as I wish to with sorrow and dread. And when I take a look at Polish history, I can understand why they might have an appreciation for that, okay? I find the Czech readers, there's a reason Kafka was Czech. Because you were doing magic realism before anybody coined the term. Kafka was, and Havel was, and all these fine writers of just a little quirky, and we're going to get in the elevator, and of course it doesn't stop at the top floor, it just keeps going. That, I could get away with an idea with the Czech Republic like that, probably not elsewhere. And sorry, although they've been, I'm saying a bad thing here, but Russian readers have been very receptive to my work, but they prefer the most realistic stuff. Nothing that smacks of ghosts. They want it to be just as real as Chekhov, okay? And so those differences I do find. The United States, I find that, I have to admit it, I'm sometimes considered too literary for, I just want some entertainment, and I'm sometimes considered too entertaining for those who are seeking literature. So I'm the man in the middle, or the prophet without honor in his own native land. Yeah, there are differences. Very much alike with the UK, although they are willing to hit more history. But again, those are generalities, and of course it varies from person to person. And I think people like you, people like Martin, people like Hansa, you could be reading literature from anywhere and finding something that speaks to you.
You can never please them all, but yeah, I agree.
No. There's an old song from Rick Nelson. You can't please everyone, so you got to please yourself.
That's great quote. I love it.
It's from his song Garden Party.
Let's look at genres now,
okay.
Because in the foreword of New Moon on the Water, you talked about about horror and what it's like. So what do you think about labels?
Thank you, Ray Bradbury. Thank you, a musician named Jim Post. Jim Post had a big hit in 1968 with a song called Reach Out of the Darkness. Reach out of the darkness and you might find a friend. And when he did a writing conference that I put together, a kid asked him, here he is, a rock and roll singer, Jim, what kind of music do you like? Rock, pop, country? He said, oh, that's simple. I like good music. And then he broke into an aria from Pagliacci. Okay? Me, I've been classed as a horror writer. I've written horror. I accept it. I'm glad of it. But I've learned that, true story, I wrote Secret Prophecies, a story for a book called Secret Prophecies of Nostradamus. The story is Buckeye Jim in Egypt. You've probably seen it. It's in New Moon on the Water.
I know about it.
Yeah. And somebody said, that's funny that you wrote a Christian fantasy. And I said, I don't know why, even though I'm not a Christian and I don't write fantasy. Yeah, but that's what it is. Except on the book when it came out, that book was classified as science fiction. Why? Because DAW Publishing, D-A-W, published science fiction mostly, and that's what they were known for. And then it got to the stores. The stores, and there were still lots of bookstores then before Amazon. The stores didn't put it in science fiction. They didn't put it in fantasy. They didn't put it in horror or historical fiction. Where did it go? Hey, there's Nostradamus in the cover. Put it there next to the tarot book in New Age. Labels are what the store clerk needs to know to figure out what shelf to put it on. My late friend Ed Gorman used to write Westerns. and great Westerns. I mean, his Trouble Seeker books were about a guy who was a circus marksman in the days of the Old West. Great books. But all of a sudden, somebody discovered Westerns are not selling. So his publisher said, "You are no longer a writer of Westerns. Write the same books you've always done, but now they're historical novels." So as I have said to many people, am I a horror writer, you ask? Okay. Do you read horror? Yes, I do. Terrific. I am a horror writer. Do you want a Christian fantasy about Dracula and non-epistolary? You bet I write those. Perfect. How could you describe it so well? Does that make sense? Ray Bradbury wound up publishing in magazines like Red Book, a woman's intellectual magazine. Ray Bradbury wound up publishing monster stories and weird tales. And Ray Bradbury said, "Here it is, it's good." The late John D. MacDonald said, "Publish it as you will. Call it what you wish. Mystery, suspense, thriller. Publish it in hardback, paperback, or cover it with your old Moroccan grandfather's skin. I don't care. But publish it." And that's my attitude.
Yeah, it makes sense, and I think you are not the only one. We spoke to Marko Hautala last year, and he is considered Stephen King of Finland. And we asked him about it, and he said, "If my publisher wants it to be there, sure. I don't agree, but let it be on the book."
That's right. That's right. Ray Bradbury was called the world's greatest science fiction writer. Ray Bradbury's came closest to science fiction when he said, "Oh yeah, there was a rocket ship." And that was his science in science fiction, okay?
I agree. I love his Fahrenheit 451. It's my favorite book. And that's just dystopia, right? That's basically not science fiction.
Yes. No, it certainly isn't. It's a cautionary tale.
Yeah. Okay, and speaking of Ray Bradbury, do you have favorite quotes from him?
Very much so. And this is one that I've shared with a lot of classes. This is one that a lot of people have shared with me that they love too. Ray Bradbury's advice was, jump off the cliff and build your wings on the way down. And for a guy like me, I am not spontaneous by nature. I work out things. I won't tackle a new computer program until I've read a manual. I have to read it. I just don't dive in. Bradbury said, stop making excuses. Here, baby bird, have a kick and get out of the nest. Let's see, you might not fly, but at least you'll make a nice effort and you'll learn something on the way down. So build your wings on the way down. And Bradbury certainly did. And he certainly gives permission to lots and lots of people to take that same spontaneous leap to, I don't know if this is going to please you, but I know it's going to please me. And I like that.
Yeah, he was a very wise man.
Yes, he was. And in his stories, he still is. You know, his body isn't here, but his imagination, his creations, his real life experiences, those are still around. That's 3/4 immortality at least. That's not so bad.
That's amazing.
Edgar Lee Masters wrote the brilliant line, immortality is not a gift. Immortality is an achievement, and only those who strive mightily will achieve it. Wow, what a line. At my best moments, that's what I'm going for. I'm going for a creation that'll be here years after I'm not. Bradbury is dust, but his stories are still alive, still talking to people.
And I think they will for a long time.
Yes, yes. Shakespeare is dead too, but his stuff is still talking to us.
And despite people saying he is very good, Shakespeare is very good.
Oh, yes.
I don't know who said that.
Bestseller.
It's not my original quote, but I have no idea who said that. Probably someone on the internet.
Yeah.
Okay. And speaking of stories, most of the Czech listeners are really curious about SMEČKA. For English speakers, it's an anthology of stories called The Pack.
Yes.
And you have written a story, Hermanito and Bo. Bo?
Yeah.
And what can you tell us about it without too much of a spoiler?
Yeah, I don't want to do the spoiler, but like so much of my stuff, it grows out of serious research into Hispanic cultures, into, okay, I'm trying to avoid that spoiler, but people who aren't necessarily people 100% of the time. How's that?
That's good.
And sometimes they get hairy, okay? And again, I really had to work on, I'm fortunate, because a lot of my research comes from people who are experts in their field. And so I spent a lot of time talking to police about what they do and how they do it and their attitude and what television gets right and what television really messes up. I've been very fortunate to know over the years Michael Black, who was a police sergeant for about 25 years, writes detective stories and action hero stories. And he's always a guy I can count on. And of course, as I said, I love research. You told me you hate it. I love it.
Well, I like it, but it devours me.
Sure. It can overwhelm. I recall when I was doing my research on the Romany language for my book, Cursed Be the Child. Well, this was pre-internet time, and there were only 7 or 8 books about the Romany language because it wasn't a written language till the end of the 19th century. And I was going crazy with, oh, hold on. This author says that word means good luck. But this author says it means good luck only with the following conditions. If you have done something to deserve good luck. And 7 authors, all of whom disagreed. And these were my basic references. That research took me 18 months then, pre-internet.
To be honest, thank God we write like novels and not academic papers.
You said it, yes.
And very surprised when you were asked to write a story for Czech anthology.
Yes, no. I'm always delighted. And if somebody wants my work and it's a publication I can respect, I will try to do it. I've become more selective in my old age about what I write. I mean, as the young writer on fire with getting published, I try to have 4 submissions a month every month.
That's a lot.
It was, but it was the way I set about learning craft. And now I'm at that fortunate place where if it isn't something that grabs me, I don't need to go credit hunting. I don't need to do something that might be okay when I prefer to do something that's superb. And so I pick and choose. And yes, for that Czech anthology, I had a story that was real right, and I'm pleased with it. People ask what is the goal, and as grandiose as it sounds, as I alluded to, I'm after immortality. And I think that some of the stories in this one, I think that some of other stories that I've put together, not yet a novel, I'm not yet totally satisfied with any novel I've done, But short stories, I've got maybe 40, maybe as many as 50 out of over 400 that could be around when I'm not. So immortality is the goal, and that's what I'm striving for. Striving mightily, I hope.
Well, I will definitely remember you.
Thank you.
So, and very, very important question connected to
Sure.
Golden Dog and this anthology. Are you a dog person?
Definitely. Definitely. We have had 3 terriers, because terriers come with a built-in sense of humor, including an Airedale that we called Houdini, because he got out of his dog crate and the dog crate was still sealed when he came to the front door to meet us. Brilliant dog. This was the same dog about whom we said, oh, he'll never get out of here. We don't have to lock the fence. He goes to the fence looking at us, takes his nose, pushes up the latch and leaves. Brilliant dog. Airedale's great. Terrier's great. Right now we dog sit once a week for, my wife Jane calls Gino her grand dog. And he's a therapy dog. I don't care how depressed you are about what, that dog can bring you around. Staffordshire Terrier. And lately he's been bringing his girlfriend Frida over, who is also a Staffy. And they're funny and they're sweet. And dogs are just the best people. As Mark Twain said, if man were any better, he might be a dog.
I agree. I'm also a dog person.
Yes.
Not that long ago, I visited a friend. She was buying a new kitten. So we were at the, how to say, the guy who sold the kittens. And she was petting the kittens and it was adorable. And then a little puppy came in and I didn't care about the kittens at all at that moment. I was like, puppy. That's how I know I'm just a dog person.
There is something to that. Hi, it's your dog here. And then they do that nose thing. And that's all it takes. I know you're there. Okay. No matter what's on your mind. I mean, I knew in my days of working very hard as a writer, I could take a reasonable break because Maggie would jump in the back seat of the car. She was an Airedale. And we would go get French fries, which that was her favorite. And we were riding down the road. Bark if you want a French fry. Okay, Bark, here you go. And it takes your mind off. Maybe I'm not going to win the Nobel Prize this year. French fries are more important than Nobel Prizes.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yep.
I will love food more than French fries any day.
Well, one more dog story. We call Lewis, our fox terrier, a diamond dog. Because we saw him, he was in his dog case or cage. We wanted him. My wife said, I've got these diamond earrings and a ring to go with him. Okay, we can work out a deal. So he became our diamond dog. We swapped. My Aunt Rose thought we were nuts. We thought you can't pet diamonds. Lewis, the diamond fox terrier.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah, he was a funny guy. He was the one who decided to jump on the table. There was a basket of 13 apples. He took one bite out of each apple. Now that is dog humor. You want to see something funny? Try this. Bop, bop, bop.
Okay, so back to your work. You said you have like 40 stories that you think will maybe make you immortal. But are there any stories you maybe regret putting out? They were not, I don't know, they were rushed, not good enough in your opinion? Or are you happy with what's out there?
they were what they were at the time. They were things that taught me craft. There was a time in United States publishing that you could literally earn while you learned. The so-called confessions magazines aimed at women taught me that I could write 7,000, 9,000, 10,000 words in a voice other than my own. And not only that, they paid the mortgage. So that was the earn while you learn days. I don't regret those stories. I don't think they represent who I am, except, oh, he was a guy who was learning the craft then. I don't regret the men's magazine stories I wrote. Some of them were straight humor. They were meant to be laughed at. They were meant to turn a dollar. And they did. They turned the dollar. That's why I say old age has allowed me the privilege of choosing what I'm going to write about. And also the privilege of allowing me to say, I'm not writing today. Jane and I are going out to dinner, and then we're going to come home and watch some great movies. Does that make sense?
It does. I think it's every writer's dream to not have to, but only when they want to. We don't have many professional authors in the Czech Republic. There is very little people who can live off writing. So it's hard to imagine to just write stories to get money from them.
Sure.
Actually, a lot of Czech beginner writers or wannabe writers hate that idea. They would rather write for free than to ask for money. And it's interesting to see.
Yes, it is. And if you have enough money in the United States, you can write for free. You can afford to. Your freedom is bought. I look back, I've not done anything that I'm ashamed of in writing. I've never written right-wing politics. I've never written for right-wing candidates. I've written some political stuff for the state. I've never written nasty pornography, although I've written some sexy stuff. And if it has my name on it, it says, yeah, I'm pleased with it. Mort Castle writer at 25 is not Mort Castle writer at 77, oh God. But that's fine. It's legitimate for what I was then. And some of the stuff that I did write for the men's magazines in particular, well, there was a 16-month period where you found a story in Cavalier magazine either by me or Dennis Etchison or Stephen King. It was our training ground. And what a beautiful training ground it was. They paid $300 for a story. Our house payment was $300. And I love those people. I can tell you right now, they're Maurice DeWalt was the fiction editor. And even after I quit writing for men's magazines, because they all pretty much disappeared, I stayed in touch with him. That man taught me ever so much.
And in the US, is this the still way for writers to start their career? Are there still magazines, or is it just e-zines now?
That's the problem. The earn while you learn situation is pretty well gone. Mm-hmm. The mid-list paperbacks. There was a time you could sell a paperback book. Your advance would be $1,000, but it would be your start. And I was there for that. The Deadly Election was a low advance, but it got my name out there. Who else published along with me at that time? Oh, Lauren D. Esselman, the great writer of mystery, detective, and Western. John F. Carr, the fine science fiction writer. Those places are unfortunately gone. And what we have, it's much easier to get published now than it used to be. It's much harder to earn a living at it. Does that make sense?
It does, it does. There's a lot of writers, a lot of books out there, and yeah.
Yeah, and particularly Amazon, you've given a lot of people a chance. Amazon, you've also, what I used to tell students was, you might have a beautiful swan here, but if your swan is living in a pig pen with a bunch of guys who are going grunt, grunt, grunt and playing in the mud, people are going to think your swan is a pig. And that's why so many possibly good books get buried, because it's everybody and his brother can publish a book. Everybody and his brother is a photographer now that he has a cell phone. Look at this. Isn't this a terrific picture? No, it's not, but okay.
And with connection to AI writing, it's getting worse and worse. I've seen an article that Amazon is basically drowning in AI ebooks now.
Yes.
And AI bots are selling the books, and they make no sense.
No, that's right.
They are there.
That's right. And a number of my friends, including Paul Tremblay, they're busy suing the AI people because you stole my stuff to make these, I don't know what to call them, these creations.
I really wonder where the AI will lead, if it will get banned or if we will have to learn to live with it. Well, I have to anyways as a teacher. Kids are using it left and right, but
sure,
for creation, you know.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe. I've tried to do some of the work with the art programs to give an artist an idea of what I wanted. And maybe I just don't have a touch for it, but it's a long way from what it could be. It's very mechanical.
It is. I've seen nice AI art, but it still feels dead inside.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
It doesn't have the dynamics, it doesn't have the soul, for me at least.
And for comic book stuff, it seldom has facial expressions that reflect anything.
Yeah, that's a big part of the problem.
Yes, yes, it is.
And speaking of boom of books and everything, I don't know how it is in the USA, but in the Czech Republic lately, there is a big boom of horror genre in general. There is a lot of books being published, being translated. Is there any difference in horror between when you were young and now? And are you happy it's more recognizable as a genre?
Yeah. Yes, there is a big difference. And much of that big difference we owe to practitioners like Stephen King, Dan Simmons, the late Anne Rice, some newer people too that are doing really, really well. Joe Hill is, what they've done is elevate the whole field, just like Bradbury told us, and now we're listening. You can make this as literary as you want to. It's not hard to say, oh, horror, okay. How about Titus Andronicus? There's a horror story, and that's as literary as you're going to get, isn't it? How about Ernest Hemingway's short story, A Clean, Well-Lighted Place? Wow, that's a horror story. What has happened is that horror writers have realized they don't have to have, here's the ghost, and let's make it scarier. Here's 3 ghosts. And now we're going to add another ghost, but this one's a vampire too. You can put something on the page, horror on the page, that speaks to the heart, to the mind, and if you will, to the soul. And they're doing it. And I mean, when I read Eric LaRocca, new writer, absolutely brilliant, daring with his choice of themes, descriptive, nasty, subversive, and well, he's brought the classroom to the book, to his writing, without making it as dull as most things that used to be called literature. Once upon a time, we said literature is something written by people who've been dead for at least 500 years. We don't say that anymore. Horror literature is indeed both horror and literature today, and I think that's lovely. And it's helped me find an audience, so I'm very pleased.
And do you think there is any difference between writing horror genre and any other more mainstream genre, or is it just the same thing, different code?
Same thing, different convention, maybe. But even then, you can defy the conventions. And if you're approaching it right, your art also gives you absolute freedom, which can be frightening because there's no roadmap. But what did Mr. Bradbury say? Jump off the cliff. You're going down, build your wings. Better hurry. And I like that. I like that. Yes. Yes, it's literature in the very best sense of the word. And as far as putting the labels on it, let that be somebody else who does that. A critic, a marketing department, a sales clerk. That's fine.
Writer should write.
Yes, I like that very much. Mark that one down. That's good.
There's also a discussion between aspiring writers online a lot because, again, in the Czech Republic, I don't know how it is in the USA. In the Czech Republic, the author also has to market their book. They have to talk about it. Otherwise, it's buried and nobody will help you.
That's exactly right. There is no advertising budget here, even with the biggest publishers, unless you are Stephen King. Stephen King doesn't need more advertising. Okay. Joyce Carol Oates doesn't need more advertising, but there will be that. For the rest of us, I remember when we were doing the publicity for, well, it came out in the Czech Republic as this. Okay, this is Shadow Show. What we got for advertising was, okay, we'll pick up your airfare to San Diego for the comic convention, and if you need to rent a car, we'll cover that. Which we did, and we picked up Margaret Atwood for the show.
Well, for once, I'm glad it's the same over there, so we don't have to dream about greener hills, but it's so sad.
No, it's never been easy, and it's rougher today than it was when I broke in. So however, you can also reach more people, especially when your technology works.
I have screenshots of you doing this, so I will use them.
That's another of my heroes, Stan Laurel.
So do you have any advice for aspiring writers, or ideally one advice that would be the best, but you can talk more, of course.
Yeah, I actually marked down something. Aspiring writers, I've stolen this from my late friend Harlan Ellison. And Harlan says, it's pretty easy to become a writer. It's hard to stay a writer. And so that's my advice to you. Realize if you're getting into this, this is not a quick race. This is not a 100-meter dash. This is cross country. It's a long time commitment. And if you want to stay a writer, there are plenty of people who publish 1, 2, 3 things and disappear. But if you are willing to make the commitment, you will eventually find an audience. It might not be the huge audience that you want, but it's awful nice. My sitting here knowing Teresa in the Czech Republic has spent time in this bunch of worlds that I created here in Crete, Illinois. And that is a worthwhile reward. So be willing to make the commitment if you say you're going to be a writer. That's the advice.
Thank you. That's very, very good advice. As that Harlan Ellison quote, I may have pirated on writing horror last week when I was preparing for the interview. And he wrote it there, right? It was interview when he was talking about horror genre.
Yes.
I read that one. So it resonated with me too. So I recognized it and I'm happy.
Yes, yes, yes. Harlan was a brilliant man, a brilliant writer, and a very good guy. I can't tell you how many times late night calls used to come so we could talk about, what are you listening to? Oh, I'm listening to Art Pepper. Oh yeah, I've got his jazz album from '57. Yes, yes, that was real good. Have you got any Ahmad Jamal? He was a great jazz fan, knew everything about it, and just as sweet a guy as I miss him very much. Too many of the people that were part of my growing up in the field aren't around anymore. So long, guys. I'd like to pretend that they're on Mars somewhere in a permanent retirement home. Ray Bradbury, Harlan Ellison, and Bob Weinberg.
As long as they get along.
Oh, they do. They do. Terrifically. Harlan was Bradbury's surrogate baby brother, and Bob Weinberg was mine, so that works out.
So now they are on the Mars, and your students are writing with you. The generations go on and on.
Yes.
It's beautiful.
Yes. It's neat. It's neat.
Okay. And I have a last question for you. And I know you said not to ask that question, but I'm asking anyway. Is there any question you hope to get asked in an interview? It's my thing. No. I ask everybody.
No. No. But I will, the one process that every writer needs. 10 quick rules for writing. Read, 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 read. Read everything. Read stuff that infuriates you. Read stuff that inspires you with, oh my God, what kind of word magic is here? Read stuff that inspires you with, if this idiot can get published, I'm sure I can. Read everything, read everything, read everything. And hey, read me, it won't break my heart.
Of course, definitely read Mort, please. So that was my last question. So do you have anything to say to the Czech readers or your fans?
Yes, I do. Thank you so much. You do me honor. You gratify me greatly. And I'm deeply appreciative.
I can hear them crying now. So Mort, thank you very much for coming to the interview. I'm very happy we made the technology work.
Ditto. And it's a pleasure to be interviewed by a writer because you know the trade, you know the territory.
Yeah, and it's hard to ask questions to writers. I filled my share of interviews, and sometimes the questions are the same over and over again. So I will not tell you where I get the inspiration anymore.
Great. Okay, thank you so much. I've enjoyed this.
Yeah, me too. So, bye.